saw that.
Welcome, everybody, to the September 9, 2020 Planning Commission Board of Zoning Appeals. If you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. If we could call the roll, please.
Richard Bardak.
Here.
Rick Lauer. Here. Susan Rissover. Here. Scott Rubenstein. Here. Scott Wolf. Here. Scott Larmer.
Here.
Andrew Kakey. Here. Wes Brown.
Here. Regarding the minutes from the August 3rd, 2020 meeting, does anyone have any revisions or corrections? Hearing none, the minutes will be approved. A couple announcement reminders. Residents watching online are able to request the password should they wish to speak at TP Reasoner, I'll spell it TPREASONER, at amberleyvillage.org. Those in chambers are asked to speak clearly into the microphone. Documents are available for download online at amberleyvillage.org under Council Agendas. Residents wishing to speak are asked to begin by introducing themselves and stating their address for the record. Callers are asked to turn off the sound on their computers if they are streaming the video while speaking. First case on the agenda tonight is case number 2020-1699 regarding Kim and Cynthia Caswell.
Mr. Barnack, just a point of order. We have been receiving complaints about our own members not having the microphone up to their mouth. So if we could all just take that time to make sure the microphone is up there so when you speak, you're heard by our audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Wes, feel free.
Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Caswell, property owners of 8101 Sagamore Drive, are requesting a variance to zoning code section 15412A to allow for the construction of a storage shed in the rear yard with a setback of 5 feet from the rear property line and 5 feet from the side property line. Their property is non-conforming as it is less than half an acre in the Residence A district, which requires a minimum 1 acre. The regulations in Residence A states that accessory structures is permitted in a rear yard not nearer to the rear or side lot line than the side yard requirement of the principal structure, which in this case would be 20 feet from the side, 20 feet from the rear. The letter to the board states that due to the small yard, meeting code would place the shed in the middle of the rear yard. The letter also states that the northwest corner of the property is the best location because the neighbors to the west have a large row of bushes that would help screen the shed. Plus, the shed would also block a gap in the line of bushes. And I can show you that here in a minute when I go through the slides. The shed is proposed to be 10 by 12, located in the northwest corner of the rear yard with the principal access facing south into the yard. And the shed will be painted closely to match closely to the house. The variance for the side and rear yard setbacks is required for the shed to be constructed as proposed. And I'll show you the gap in the bushes, the location of the shed, and the height of the shed as they're proposed. And there's the height of shed they're proposing to build.
Is Kim and or Cynthia Caswell present? Feel free to come forward. Now, feel free, please speak into the microphone. We record everything, and it's the only way we can keep record of who's speaking. Please state your name and address for the record, just so we know who's here.
I'm Cindy Caswell, 8101 Sagamore Drive, Amberley.
Is there anything you'd like to add in addition to what Wes presented?
Not really too. I took a picture before I left from our deck that we recently built to kind of show that Greg, I forget what his last name is now, he had come over when we first moved in and introduced himself. He lives over in Roland Heights. Rollman Estates. Anyway, and he was saying about how he likes the openness, and I was like, well, we're not putting up any fences, we like the openness too. And thought about, so if we put the shed in the proposed area, it would still allow for that openness between our properties, and so that. Any questions or?
Sorry, quick question. So if you were to abide by the setbacks as they're written, it would basically put your shed like in the middle of your yard, is that?
Well, I wouldn't say exactly in the middle. Probably the one end of it would come close to the middle of it.
Okay, so it
And,
would take up a considerable amount of not only your
it
space,
would,
but the
yeah.
views and
Plus, we have
openness.
trees that are there that, it would, aesthetically, I think it would look best where we're proposing.
Okay, just trying to establish the hardship of putting it in the corner, or putting
Yeah.
it within the setbacks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Tammy, do we know if you have anyone online that has any question or comment?
Do any of our guests online have any comments?
Take that as a no. Scott, have we received any commentary from any resident?
We have not received any comments in regards to this applicant.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to grant the variance. I think the hardship is indicated where the shed would basically take up a large portion of her property, and it seems like the placement of it is reasonable. I know that she mentions within the case that she was going to do some sort of flower garden or something around it to keep it from being seen. I don't know if we really need to add that in or not. It looks like it's pretty well protected from the bushes that are there.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Fine.
Good luck, ma'am.
Rich,
Yes, sir.
hey, before you move on to the next case, I had a couple of questions. First, I don't think we approved the minutes from the last meeting. Did we?
did.
Yeah.
Did we? Sorry. My real question, wow. In the notice, there was a third case that was referenced, I think,
Yeah, Tammy said they didn't. they
on
had more
Esther Drive. Is that
additional questions.
no longer on the docket?
It is not.
Okay, so we're only doing the two. Okay, just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Right. Forgot about it.
Okay, second case on the agenda, case number 2020-1701 regarding Brandon and Christina Poston. Wes?
Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Poston, property owners of 8191 Fontaine Court are requesting two variances to zoning code section 15412A. The variances would allow for the construction of a 6-foot-high privacy fence in the rear and on the left side of the house, and a 4-foot-high black aluminum fence to be installed in the Galbraith Road front yard of the residence. The property is a corner lot on the southwest corner of Galbraith and Fontaine and is zoned Residence A. The house sits in the southwest corner of the lot, making most of the usable area in the front yards along Galbraith and along Fontaine. The letter to the board states that they are requesting to allow the installation of the 4-foot low-maintenance black aluminum fence in the front yard along Galbraith to allow a place for their kids to play without fear of them running into the street. The fence would extend from the side of the house approximately 33 feet from Galbraith Road, which is about where the right-of-way is for Galbraith Road on this property. And then it would circle back around and meet up with the existing 6-foot fence. The request is also to replace the deteriorated 6-foot fence that runs parallel with the back of the house and then on the left side of the house. And this 6-foot fence is needed due to the neighbors to the, I guess that would be to the west, Their driveway and their house are approximately 16 feet from the back of the Mr. and Mrs. Postman's house. So the letter states that the existing fence is deteriorated and beyond repair, and they're looking to replace this with a 6-foot wooden dog ear type fence. Both of these fences are, or both variances are required for both fences to be installed, the 6-foot high fence and the front yard fence.
Sure. Brandon Poston, 8191 Fontaine Court. So as Wes said, so first, thanks everyone for your time as well. And as Wes mentioned, we are requesting those 2 fences with 2 small boys that are already wild at 2 years and not 8 months old. They like to run around, not having any yard at all, as you can see in the picture. There's no grass, even if we cut it off at the side of the house. Having even this little bit of grass fenced in would save us a lot of headache and fear that they would go into the street. I don't, there's not much else really to add other than what we already had in the letter, but happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
So did the application say something, sorry, about a difference in height of the property behind you that, or is it just the proximity to it that makes it so that the lights come in your?
Yeah, so the property, I mean, it's right on the property line, so you can see the proximity to the house behind. But their driveway and their garage is in the back of their home. So they're about at least 5 feet above our property. So that 6-foot fence at least somewhat helps reflect or deflect the lights that are coming in when they're pulling into their garage, because we have windows against the whole back side of the house. So there is a 6-foot fence now, but as Wes mentioned in the letter, it's beyond repair. It's falling apart.
So do you have any pictures of that current fence you have? Did we have any in the packet? I didn't see anything.
I went by and looked at this. It is an unusual situation. Not only is it a non-conforming lot, but the land slopes down from the neighbor's property, basically right into the fence, from what I can tell. And so the neighboring property is significantly higher in terms of elevation from the applicant's property, and this fence sort of is in between that. So the neighboring property is almost above the fence, I think. It was sort of hard to tell from the street, and I didn't walk behind, but yeah, you can see it there. And it's an unusual situation. There's very little room behind the house.
That's a pretty good example of how disrepair the fence is.
It's really it's pretty good. And I guess my point in bringing that up is that looking at it from the neighbor's house, it would look like about a 2-foot fence. Yeah.
Right. And then that little piece of fence that's coming off the front portion of the house, that will not be there anymore, correct?
Right. That'll be, if you go back a little bit. So that'll be removed, and the 4-foot black aluminum fence will come out to the 35 feet or whatever.
I think that in itself would be a big improvement to.
Yeah.
Sir, I don't have a question for you. I only have a comment, and I would just encourage you. I'm sure you're looking at different types of fences. I don't think you'll be happy with that black aluminum fence in the long run. We have one, and I hate it. If you can look at a split rail with the mesh, I think it's more attractive in keeping with the neighborhood. This is just my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with the zoning, and they actually last a long time, and I think you'd like it. So at least get a comparison price on that.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
If you're interested, but I think there's clearly a hardship here. This is an unusual lot, in my opinion.
Just Wes, with the fence, he's got a picture of the back fence. Does the wood have to be one way or the other as far as the neighbor's house versus your own house, as far as which part of the fence is showing?
Yes, our new zoning code on the fence that we just, I believe it already went into effect, does state that the finished side needs to face the neighbor.
So I just wanted to point that out,
Unless you did one where it's alternating, so both sides are finished.
And something I did forget to mention, I believe the letter said that they are talking with a landscape designer to landscape the fence also, correct?
So I don't have a problem with it, but I just wanted to point that out to your attention. I thought that's what we had changed it to, but I just wanted to double check that that was right. So, thank you.
Amy, do we have anyone online?
If any of our online,
Hello, this is Kayanna Long from 8180 Fontaine Court.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead.
I have a question. Will the aluminum fence, the 4-foot aluminum fence, can you see through it? Or is it solid?
Yeah, so you can see right through the aluminum fence.
Okay, and you mentioned some landscaping. Where would the landscaping be?
So the landscaping would be on the inside of the fence. So I know there was a concern with the current bushes that were there, which are no longer there. So it's not going to impede anyone pulling out of Fontaine Court onto Galbraith.
Okay, that was my concern.
Right.
Thank you.
The one about the bushes or the landscape?
I don't think we typically, I mean, this is a corner lot, and we've had these issues come up a number of times. If this were not a corner lot, this aluminum fence, I think, would be permitted if it were a traditional lot. And I hope they put landscaping around it, but I don't know that it's fair for us to impose that condition just because it's a corner lot. That's my opinion, but I think it'll look better closed in, honestly, especially if you do a split rail. But in any event, that's a lot of landscaping. It'd be significant expense to have to landscape the entire interior of that.
Yeah, I think the plan has just a little bit of landscaping on it, the plan that was submitted.
Anyone want to make
I'll make a motion that we approve the plan as submitted with the landscaping and the fencing as submitted.
I have one question, though, for Scott. Do we have any commentary from any residents, neighbors, et cetera, before?
No, there were no inquiries in regards to this request.
Thank you. We have a second?
So, can
Second.
Can I ask a question if we're going to have discussion about the motion? On the landscaping, the plan shows landscaping out sort of closer to Galbraith, a row of, looks like 5 bushes, and then a lot of landscaping behind the house as well. I don't know how much of that is existing, or if that's proposed. So I just want to ask Susan, are you talking about all the landscaping that's shown on the Poston
I don't think we
residence
need to require
rear
extra.
master?
I was just, my intention was to just, it looks like a well-thought-out plan, so to approve the plan as they submitted it without requesting or requiring anything additional.
We have a second on that.
Second?
favor?
We do.
Aye.
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 Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Final item on the agenda, case number 2020-1702, public hearing of the Amberley Village Planning Commission to discuss proposed changes to the Amberley Village Code pertaining to the allowable height of hedges. Scott?
What's before you this evening came about as the council was considering modifications to the property maintenance code. And one particular word stood out to the council, and that word was hedges. Our current code does not allow your hedge to be any taller than 4.5 feet. And that seemed to be problematic. Maybe back in the day, people did use hedges instead of fences. But in this day and age, I don't know that we have hedges, but I don't think people are intentionally using them in lieu of a fence. And staff believes that the intention was for that not to occur, so that people weren't installing 12-foot high hedges in their side yard in lieu of a 4.5-foot fence. So this item was referred to the law committee, and the law committee recommended making modifications, and those modifications are in front of you with the red and the blue ink. Now, the blue was just added today just to give further clarification to the extent of the word hedges. But the intent is that somebody could have a hedge, but in the right-of-way, out in the public right-of-way near the street, it could not exceed the height, which is 2.5 feet. That is in our code right now. So this is just to clean the code up and to take that word hedges out so that it doesn't cause any misunderstandings. Because this is a modification to the zoning code, it is necessary for you to conduct a public hearing. So you need to open the public hearing, take public comment, and then close the public hearing. And then you can have your discussion about this item and then ultimately make a recommendation back to village council that it will take the ordinance into consideration.
Is the current rule 4.5 feet?
Yes,
About
for
hedges?
a hedge cannot be any taller than 4.5 feet.
It is 7:27 PM. We'll consider the public hearing open. Any residents wishing to speak? Presently, there's no one else, looks like, in chambers. Do we have anyone online that wishes to speak on this issue? Thank you. Any discussion?
Taking a right-hand turn onto Roman Estate almost every day, my view is pretty much blocked by a hedge to the left. It's dangerous. And so I think there's a lot of safety reason behind, I think, this particular change here, because I have to creep out. I'm creeping out so slow, looking left, I've almost run some guy walking over on the street coming up a couple of times. So I think it's a real safety concern, and I can see why there's a concern about the height of them. That's all.
My take on or my understanding of the change is, because the way the code is written right now, it's just like a wall or a fence. You can't have it in the front yard. So even bushes up by the house can't be over 2.5 feet, or it can't be over 4.5 feet. So if somebody wanted something taller, up by their landscaping or something like that, they couldn't do it right now. So that's why we tried to put that in there. If you're in or near the right-of-way, that has to be 2.5 feet. Anything else beyond that, between the right-of-way and the house, can be. So that's my understanding of the.
And that's my concern too, is the right-of-way when you're trying to make a turn one way or the other, and you can't see over the hedge.
Correct. And we do have and I don't recall the number, but we do have the section of the code that talks about the intersection. So if you measure where the two streets come together, you measure 50 feet in either direction, create a triangle. Nothing in that area can be over 2.5 feet. So that we have sections of the code that kind of address that, but it's really hard to, I guess, enforce, because almost every house in the village has hedges that are over 4.5 feet.
Yeah, Wes, that's my question, is really about enforcement. I mean, I'm just thinking about when I used to live on Belle Kay Lane, there are, I don't know if they're even considered a hedge. They're honeysuckle that
Right.
is on the west side of Ridge Road, basically all the way from the building we're sitting in right now, all the way up to.
Right. In the maintenance department, they try to trim that.
They trim that back, but
2 or 3 times
those,
a year, but
those things are 10, 12, 15 feet high.
Right.
And so I guess my question is, we're not going to suddenly start enforcing this differently than we have been. In other words, we've been allowing those bushes to exist for many, many years.
Right.
As long as
they're, because I think the maintenance guy, I think they try to cut them back to the right of way.
And
So as long as they're outside the right of way, they can be that tall. It's just Once they encroach into that 12, 15 feet from the road, that's where we need to get them cut back or cut down
And just
for the visibility issue.
Right, and just for the purpose of anybody who may be watching online, you know, if you do have a situation like Scott described, I personally have called the village a time or two and said, hey, these bushes are overgrown, it's difficult for me to see, and they will get right out there and cut them down. They do a nice job with that. But I want to make sure the intent of this is to essentially eliminate hedges from the restriction on the 4.5 feet unless they're within the right-of-way.
Outside of the right-of-way.
Right.
If they're in the right-of-way, they have 2.5 feet. Outside can be, allow people.
And is it fair to say we really wouldn't be regulating any hedges or shrubs unless they're in the right-of-way?
Pretty much.
Okay. So somebody could theoretically plant a row of arborvitaes between their house
Kind of like
and their
Spring
neighbor.
Valley. In Galbraith and Spring Valley, they have that on the whole corner.
Right. So as long as they weren't in the right-of-way, they could have tall bushes dividing their house from the neighbor.
They could plant a hedge right around their entire house, so the house is no longer visible. I mean,
You get into
Yeah, I
questions
don't
of what's
know.
a hedge. I mean, that people across the street from
Right.
me have a row of
I thought that was a
evergreen
hedge, but
trees.
they didn't think that was a hedge. But I thought that was a hedge.
Yes.
I mean, when trees are planted to purposefully grow into each other, to me, that's a hedge, but.
I'm not sure what it is, but I'm sure they're probably, not in our code, but we would go by just the dictionary to, and if, I don't know if Andy wants to speak to that or not, but. And maybe we should add a definition of hedges.
The only other drafting thing I might point out is in the new paragraph, I guess was just added. It says, or the new sentence, hedges not along or adjacent to a public right-of-way may be permitted and are not subject to the 2.5-foot height restriction. Just, I think I would change maybe to are permitted. And otherwise, I'm actually okay with this. I think if people want to plant bushes, that's all right, and we're going to get into a whole mess of trouble trying to figure out what's a hedge and what's a tree and what's a bush and what's a row.
I think this is just clarifying what people were doing anyway. and
Agreed.
Making the village's job a little easier to not have to make that call.
Agreed.
It's described as a bush or shrub.
A hedge.
Do you receive any commentary from anybody on this issue?
There has been no correspondence on this particular matter.
Thank you. Anyone else have any discussion? Hearing none, it's 7:33, so the public hearing is closed.
Make a motion to approve, I guess it's just us saying that we approve this as amended?
The amendment being the may be to shall.
With the amendment being maybe to shall.
Thank you. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any new business? Hearing none, we're adjourned.
Very good.